Hunter Cooke, Dean Bisceglia, Jonathan Rodriguez, best of the best, TexasHighSchoolFootball.com. I'm Kyle Spishock, and we are at the Gridiron. Let me get some of y'all's Week 3 takeaways, starting with you, Jonathan. Go ahead.
Wow. That's what I'm going to say. Wow. I was at Cedar Hill and Mansfield. I was expecting a little bit closer of a competition between those two. But it's obvious that Cedar Hill is not the same team that was a two-loss team early in the season, as they had a ground and pound attack that was absolutely unstoppable for Mansfield. And Kennedy Brooks, unfortunately, none of his high school career comes to an end, but a lot of it was on himself because a lot of the offensive linemen that were out for Mansfield. And also the Abilene and DeSoto game, that's wow. I mean, how do you – wow. I'm sure, I'll let Hunter elaborate more on that, but I was going to say wow.
I was actually out at San Angelo Central in Allen. Let me tell y'all, it was one of the best atmospheres for high school football I've experienced outside of – I think it was the best of all time outside of that 2006 game between Trinity and South Lake Carroll that brought like 46,000 people into the old Texas Stadium. It was just nuts. And last week we talked a lot about how playing in San Angelo would benefit San Angelo. Well, it turned out that kind of flipped on its head because that 30% chance of rain became a lot. And while I did come out of this saying, yes, Allen is very impressive, and if you put these two teams on a neutral field, I'd take Allen to win more times than I would take San Angelo to win on the circumstances. We can't sit here and talk about this game without talking about the injuries to Cal Vincent, who was out for the entire second half of that game, and the weather, which completely stymied a very, very good San Angelo Central air attack.
I got to stick with Jonathan's wows. I was at the Katy North Shore game, and you asked me if who am I taking with Katy at the 2-yard line with first and goal. I don't care who it is. Apparently, if it's against North Shore, I'm gonna lose that time. But I got to go. North Shore stopping Katy at the 2-yard line 4 straight times, and then knocking them out of the playoffs. And then you got to go up a little bit north. And the game that happened this week in College Station with Manville and Cedar Park. They were the undefeated state champs, last year, and then they were undefeated this year.
Like, that game was not as close as that score says. From everything that we've heard, it was Manville playing on another level, which is really, really shocking because Cedar Park is an excellent team as well.
Well, and it's surprising because Manville lost a lot from last year too. I mean, they have a couple players playing in the SEC this year already. So I mean, that just shows like how deep they were and how tough 6A is.
Quarterfinals. It seems like the rematches are pretty hyped between Cedar Hill and DeSoto and Lake Travis Westlake. Is the hype warranted, or do you all expect similar results as the first games? Dean, go ahead.
The hype is warranted in the DeSoto Cedar Hill game. I mean, DeSoto is not the team that beat Cedar Hill earlier in the year, and Cedar Hill is not the team that lost to DeSoto earlier in the year. I mean, they're pretty much playing how each other was playing earlier in the year. Like Cedar Hill was struggling earlier in the year. DeSoto is now struggling. Even though they're still undefeated, so it's kind of hard to say that they're struggling. But Cedar Hill is on fire right now, and I mean, like Hunter always says, it's tough to beat the same team twice in that same year.
I'm not really super excited for any of them. I mean, DeSoto and Cedar Hill, yes, that's always a great game. But like Dean said, I think Cedar Hill is going to be closer, and that one warrants a little bit of the hype. I don't think the Westlake Lake Travis game is deserving of the hype. This is an LT team that has just stomped every single person that they've played outside of their 2 opening games. They lost against Conference Jets and they beat Cibolo Steel in overtime. I don't think that Austin Westlake is on the level of Cibolo Steel or Converse Judson, even with Ellinger in. They've had a little bit of an easy route into this game. So has LT as well, but that just means that LT is healthy. And I don't even think a healthy Sam Ellinger makes this a close game. I mean, yes, the game was played at Lake Travis last time. That has something to do with it. But we're not talking about, they got beat by a couple scores and they were in it. Earlier this year, Westlake was never in this game.
First off, I want to say this. In my personal life, my personal life philosophies, hype does not exist in my dictionary or my vernacular. Hype is something that's not real. So whenever the word hype is around, it's a trigger word for me because I just don't believe in it. Because hype, I'm not sure what you're talking about. We're past that.
All right, Boogie Mom.
Yeah, really, yeah.
Oh, really?
You do know our radio show is called The Hype. I mean, what are you doing?
As far as the, let's call it the build-up to these games, I think between those two games that you have had us like just looking at between Cedar Hill and DeSoto, Cedar Hill is looking like the team that I expected them to be at the beginning of the season with a power back combo of Kagan Williams and Marquise Foreman. Now, mind you, Kagan Williams was a star at Stephenville before he came over to Cedar Hill, so he's been known to do quite a bit of damage. And from what I saw, Cedar Hill is going to that ground and pound identity that I expected them throughout the beginning of the season. And let's not forget, you have a guy named Charleston Rambo catching balls on the outside of the numbers. And Avery Davis looked sharp in that game too as well when I saw him play. However, a game that DeSoto comes back within a span of like 33 seconds, it's 2 scores. They're playing with a different identity now. Because that's not the first time they were on the fringe of losing a close game. Because you can go all the way back to week 2 against Midland, where they were able to pull out a close game situation.
Besides the rematches, what are some other quarterfinals games that you all are excited for that actually deserve the hype?
I gotta go towards the west. Gotta go to San Antonio and the Alamo Dome. I know our CEO Brian's gonna be a little disappointed in me, but I gotta go with Foster in this game. You know, he's all on the dripping hype train. But
Drip, baby, drip.
Yeah, I think they're gonna drip tears all the way home, back up to Dripping Springs.
There you go.
Last week, we talked a lot about Abilene against the world, or I did a little bit, a lot about the West Texas matchups. Obviously, West Texas disappointing in the final scoreboard, a 1-7 against the DFW teams. But you can argue that they acquitted themselves quite well against them. I mean, it took a miraculous fumble for DeSoto to beat Abilene. It took a torrential downpour for Allen to finally pull away from San Angelo Central, and an injury to Cal Vincent, where they had to put in their sophomore quarterback. But the game I want to focus on this week is one that comes out of that West Texas, the only West Texas school to beat their DFW counterparts, and that will be Abilene Wiley, stomping out Argyle and now moving on to face Levelland and
Ballyhoo, extravagant publicity or fuss, otherwise known as a synonym for hype. So from now on, I'll be using ballyhoo as my word of choice.
It's ballyhooed, though. Like, it's a much ballyhooed game. Are we in 17th century England?
Ballyhoo.
Oh, would you like to go to the jousting tournaments? The most ballyhooed
Ballyhoo.
As a matter of fact, refer to me as Sir Jonathan of North Texas.
There you go.